Buenas, ¿qué tal? Bienvenidos a otro Memory Card Profile. Ya tocaba, nos hemos tomado un tiempecillo de asueto para cocinarlo a fuego lento, pero el de hoy es un invitado, el de hoy es un programa, una entrevista, una charla, a la que le tenía muchas ganas y que me ha hecho especial ilusión. Lo son todos al final los invitados que vamos trayendo al programa, pero el de hoy, que vivió la época dorada de los 16 bits, que contribuyó con su buen hacer, sobre todo en el tema de las dos dimensiones, a ese momento tan especial para muchos y en particular para mí, como fue la época de los 16 bits, como decía, además el Megadrive con mucho peso, pues es especialmente especial, valga la redundancia. David Perry ha tenido digamos que la paciencia por un lado y también el detalle de concedernos su tiempo y sus recuerdos, y queremos desde Mary Station, desde Memory Card, haceros partícipes de esa charla que tuvimos con él, que está llena de recuerdos muy interesantes. Vamos a verla.
Los 16 bits sublimaron las dos dimensiones desde principios de los 90 a golpe de talento. Y si las entrañas de las máquinas que triunfaron entonces dieron de sí lo que dieron, fue en gran medida porque hubo quien supo exprimirlas escribiendo líneas de código rebosantes de magia que nos llegaron a tantos en forma de maravillosos juegos. Y entre los nombres ilustres que brillan desde entonces por haberlo hecho posible, se encuentra sin duda nuestro invitado en Memory Card Profiles de hoy, David Perry, padre de la inolvidable Shiny Entertainment y responsable de algunos de los hitos más notables de aquella irrepetible época. Ingenioso, meticuloso en lo visual y siempre buscando el disfrute en lo jugable, su legado es enorme y su historia, como hoy veremos, apasionante.
There are a bunch of names that all fans of video games and the industry recognize and recall when talking about a lot of very important moments and crucial turning points in history of video games, and yours is one of them, of course. Okay, there are I guess doubtlessly clear moments in history that have your name attached to them, and I would like you to tell me, when looking back, as to start our conversation, what is it that you, I don't know whether saying feel more proud of, or maybe the first thing that comes to your mind after all these years connected to the industry, what is it that comes to your mind? What do you feel more proud of?
I think for me, when I started in Northern Ireland, there was no one really to help, so it was a case of you just had to learn as you go. And I got offered a job once in England, and I was still in school, and so to leave school to take on a job in the games business seemed like a great idea to me. My teachers thought it was a terrible idea, but I went to England and I realized how much I didn't know, so I had so much to learn, and I had to learn it quick before they noticed that I didn't really know, I wasn't really professional. And so I was learning as fast as I possibly could. And I think that's been a theme for my whole career now, is surround yourself with people who know what they're doing and learn as much as you can as fast as possible, and you can keep growing. It's a bit like a video game where you're getting you're leveling up, +1 in this and +1 in that. As you learn skills in life, I think that helps a lot with your career. And so that generally, in a way, my life became a video game in the form of I keep trying to get +1. Like I'll get Photoshop, and I want to get good at Photoshop. I try not to just learn a few things. I try to learn how to actually use the product. And so when you do that and you keep doing that with different things in life, it sort of opens up the world to you a little more than it would have done. So I've had a lot of fun with that sort of growth curve in my career.
Nacido en Irlanda del Norte en 1967, David pronto descubrió en la microinformática que en los 80 llevó el medio a las masas de forma activa y que despertó en tantos jóvenes como él una pasión que acabaría convirtiéndose en profesión, un objetivo laboral para el que sin duda tenía un talento innato. Movido por la atracción que los arcades sin duda ofrecían y sus ganas por replicar algo de todo eso que llevara su firma, David nos cuenta cuáles fueron los motivos que le abocaron a saltar de lleno al mundo del desarrollo.
Yeah, well, it was a combination of things. So arcades were amazing because you were getting to play games you could never afford, and that was so important to be able to do that. Also, in the old days, arcade machines were built around the idea. So each arcade machine was different in different controls and dials, and sometimes you were looking through a periscope because you're in a submarine or something, or you're driving a battle tank. And that idea of the game being designed around it made arcade games phenomenal. They were so fun and so interesting. When people ask me about programming, why the hell would anyone do that? It's so boring. Like, it's such a boring job. I would explain to them that no, it's not really. It's actually like solving puzzles. So whenever you have a puzzle and you complete it, you get a little thrill. It's like, I beat the puzzle. That's what programming is all the time. So you're constantly, how am I going to do this? And then you think about it for a bit, and then you do it, and then it works. Or it doesn't work, it doesn't work, it doesn't work, and then it works. You get that little moment of, oh, there it is, that's working now, and then you move on to the next puzzle. And that's what programming really is, and it's kind of a fun thing once you get doing it. But what happens is there's a moment in programming where you suddenly realize, hold on a minute, I could make anything, right? I know enough now to make anything. It would be like you're learning to play the guitar, and you can only play 3 songs. Like, I can only do these 3 songs and then I'm done, right? But there's another moment where you actually learn how to play the guitar, and then you go, wait, I could play anything, right? And the whole world becomes open to you. That's what happens with programming, and so it's very, it sort of drew me in, and I got in there, and I really enjoyed it, and so I ended up staying.
Los primeros pasos de Perry en la programación, por cierto, se los debe, al menos en lo que a herramientas se refiere, al mítico Clive Sinclair y sus legendarias máquinas. En su caso fue con un ZX81, ancestro del gran Spectrum, que le descubrió las bambalinas del videojuego y con el que pudo sumergirse pasito a pasito en el mundo de la programación.
At home, our family wasn't that well off, so we couldn't afford to just buy lots of things. So I had to get one Sinclair ZX81. I had to buy it used from somebody else, and I got my Sinclair ZX81, and that became the center of my universe. Nothing else I owned was as interesting as that ZX81, and so I would spend as much time as I could, working on it. And as you're typing games in, which is the way it was in those days, you would buy a magazine, you would type in a game, and then you would play it. And I didn't even have a cassette recorder, which meant that I couldn't save it.
That's what I was going to say. How did you save them?
I never saved games, so I had to type it all in, play it, hope it didn't crash, and then
don't
when
turn
I
off
turned
your
it off,
computer. There you go.
The game's gone. And I did that for quite a while, but it improves your typing skills, and it also teaches you code. So what you do is you see lives equals 3, and you go lives equals 10, and then you run the game and it works. And you start to realize, I can maybe, what else can I do in here? Can I make the ship move a little faster? And you can.
Como Perry, fueron muchos los jóvenes que en esos años sintieron por toda Europa la llamada de la programación de videojuegos. También en España, que como sabemos, tuvo su momento de creatividad y talento desatados con aquella recordada Era Dorada. Siendo como es este un tema que al que os habla le apasiona, la opinión de Perry al respecto sobre los motivos que llevaron a una generación a embarcarse en el mundo del videojuego desde su habitación resulta interesante y esclarecedora. ¿Qué tenían en común tantos chavales en países tan distintos en esencia para que todos decidieran adentrarse en el mundo del videojuego de forma en muchos casos totalmente autodidacta?
Yeah, what I think that occurred was that for some reason in America, consoles took off, and a lot more kids were bought a device which had no keyboard, and it had 2 joysticks or 1 joystick, and they never got the chance to learn. They just didn't. The device wasn't built for that. Now the people that bought like Apple computers and TRS-80s and those kind of devices, Amigas, Commodore 64s, VIC-20s, those guys were able to code. And they did, but there was an awful lot of them ended up buying just a console and never got the chance, and I think that was why it was a period of time. How lucky were we that they kept putting keyboards on everything. The Commodore, the Amstrad had a nice keyboard on it, like it was a legitimate, and it came with a monitor. It was a nice setup, and so that is, I think, those decisions, whoever made them, the designer of this, obviously Sir Clive Sinclair had a big impact, but those people that made those decisions to keep putting keyboards on things did us all a favor. Imagine that was not the case and the Amstrad CPC just had a joystick. We'd have a lot less programmers.
Los primeros pasos profesionales de Perry en la industria transcurren en Londres, donde colabora para algunas de las más míticas marcas del sector de la microinformática como Mirrorsoft o Elite, entre otros. ¿Era trabajar para la industria de entonces un salto cualitativo para alguien tan joven como él? ¿Cómo arrancó su carrera tras el cambio de escenario? ¿Eran Londres y aquellas empresas el sueño que imaginaba desde su Irlanda natal?
Well, I made a bit of a mistake because my negotiation skills weren't there. So my salary that I negotiated was, I think, around £3,500 a year. Which I didn't realize would pay for just my train and my food. And I was wearing the same clothes every day. I slept my mother was living in England at the time, so I slept in her living room on a camp bed. And I didn't realize I hadn't negotiated well because I was not gonna be able to really survive in England on that. But it did allow me to really get in and start learning. And as I said, I learned as quickly as I could. And they quickly started giving me more and more money the more that I did. So, I thought it was interesting because my father worked for the government and ultimately the game industry was paying me more money than he earned. Quite quickly. And I think that he found that quite exciting to see, like this industry is real and it's legitimate.
Su primer gran juego se publicó poco después. Al socaire del éxito de la serie de animación del momento, Las Tortugas Ninja, David escribió un título licenciado para los microordenadores del momento que le abrió los ojos a una realidad nueva, la de las franquicias de éxito, que le acompañaría durante su carrera. Pero además, aquel primer éxito comercial supuso el impulso definitivo a una carrera que desde entonces ya no se detendría.
What happened was there was a big sort of change in my career when I did the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles game.
So the coin-op one that you're talking about, the second one that was actually made, or the first one? The coin-op one?
It was just yes, it was a license, but I didn't have to copy. We ended up doing our own game, but using the property. But what happened is I realized the power of branding, and I didn't really get that before. But boy, did I get that when you put a property like that, it went straight to #1 in the charts. And just like the music industry and the movie industry, if you have a #1 hit, people want to work with you. And so suddenly my career opened up to, I can now, there's lots of work, I could do any game because you start to have a resume. And so in my career, that became a pattern for me, is I would do some things that I wanted to do, but every time I did a licensed property or a branded property or worked with a movie or whatever, then my career would pop again.
Rodearse de los mejores fue parte estratégica del éxito de Perry, y ese aprendizaje del que él mismo hablaba supuso también tener a su lado a otros grandes que le ayudaron a crecer y a mantener los estándares de calidad que sus juegos siempre tuvieron.
I had this artist that I started to work with because in the old days, games, the graphics were very blocky, so I could do the graphics, and there was no music, it was just beeps, so I can do beeps pretty good. So, but then when the graphics started to become color and with pixels, then I'm no good anymore. And I had this artist, Nick Broody, that joined me, and then we became a team, and we outsourced the music to different artists depending on the game. But that idea of sort of collaborating and starting to make games meant that we would get excited about something. Like we made a game called Crazy Jet Racer, and we got all excited with this is the coolest thing we've ever made. And then we realized nobody wants Crazy Jet Racer. Like, what the heck is that, right? And Virgin comes along and says, wow, this game's really cool. Can we call it Dan Dare 3? And we'll put some references to Dan Dare in it. And there you go. Suddenly you've got to deal with Virgin, and the game gets done, and the game has really cool.
Ese momento, la llegada de Virgin a su carrera, es sin duda un punto de inflexión que marcó el devenir de sus siguientes años, y puso a Perry en un contexto nuevo para el que demostró estar sobradamente preparado. El gigante británico, cuya sombra era por entonces ya muy alargada, fue la catapulta para que David pasara del mundo de la microinformática al de las consolas, que a principios de los 90, con los 16 bits ya arrancando fuerte, habían demostrado ser el presente y el futuro de la industria. ¿Cómo fue el cambio a las videoconsolas? Y sobre todo, ¿cómo fue el encuentro con una máquina a la que desde entonces se le asociaría como la maravillosa Megadrive de Sega?
Nick and I started making a game called Supremacy on the Commodore 64, and it's amazing because you're coding an entirely new environment and just, I don't know what it was in those days, but we just believed we could do it, so we just did it. It wasn't, if we had sat and thought for a moment, this is quite the undertaking, but we would just start typing and you know, solving whatever problems come along, and suddenly we have a game running, and Virgin wanted to publish that game, and we found out later we couldn't call it Supremacy in the US, so it became called Overlord. But then the question came, well, what about the Atari ST? So we program on that. But the industry was moving pretty fast, so I didn't really get time to enjoy. Like, I didn't get to make a second game on either of those devices because everything moved on, and suddenly I was given a Sega Megadrive. But the problem was that the manuals were terrible. Like the actual, they were translated from Japanese badly, and so I'm trying to work out how to program this thing. I've never programmed a game console. This is a new thing to me. The language is the same as the Amiga and the ST, so that helped. But we had to get in there and try to work it out.
En ese nuevo escenario, volvió a repetirse una de esas constantes a las que aludía, la de los juegos licenciados, en este caso con una película de éxito ochentera, que fue así su estreno como programador para Megadrive y su primer contacto con Hollywood, que por entonces ya era muy consciente de la importancia de licenciar sus obras para convertirlas en juegos, si bien la brecha entre ambos universos era aún enorme, como el propio Perry recuerda.
The movie that we got was The Terminator, and you know, James Cameron's first movie, the first Terminator. So I was very excited about that. And then we found out that Hollywood and the game industry don't know how to work together, because they, you know, we wanted to be the Terminator. We're like, gamers are going to want to be the Terminator. They're going to walk around and be the Terminator. It's going to be so great. And then they said you can't be the Terminator because we don't have the rights to Arnold Schwarzenegger. And we're like, oh, this is really bad. But it's okay because we'll be Linda Hamilton, who's Sarah Connor. And then they said, no, we don't have the rights to Linda Hamilton.
You have the rights to nothing.
Then we're like, well, how are we going to make the Terminator game with no Sarah Connor and no Terminator? I don't get it. And then they're like, well, you're going to be Kyle Reese, the guy that dies in the movie. And so we're like, oh, okay.
La clave de aquel juego, más allá de las dificultades que suponía trabajar con Hollywood, fue que le dio la oportunidad de hacer algo a nivel visual como nunca antes había podido llevar a cabo, gracias a la potencia de la máquina para la que programaba. Algo que además fue el principio de uno de los elementos por los que su trabajo sería aplaudido entonces y recordado después. Hablamos, como no, de las fastuosas animaciones Made in Perry que acompañarían a sus trabajos bidimensionales desde entonces.
We ended up saying, let's do the first photoreal sprites. And what we did is we went out in the back garden with a camera and we took pictures of walk cycles and things like that with, you know, with whatever we could find. Like, we didn't have any weapons, so we used like a toilet plunger. I'm not kidding. From the shed, we just go in the shed. What looks like a gun, and then we take that, and so we took all these pictures, and then we were like, oh, we didn't think of doing this in front of a green screen or something. There's a shed in every shot, so now we have to cut the shed out of every single image. It was a nightmare, but the net result is the characters are photoreal, which, you know, for its time in low pixels.
Terminator fue su puerta de entrada a Estados Unidos, pero el primer juego para cuyo desarrollo Perry debió bajar físicamente a California, donde desde entonces ya residiría, es otro para el que de nuevo una marca sirvió de apoyo comercial. Global Gladiators, el plataformas con mensaje medioambiental patrocinado por McDonald's, fue su billete de avión a una nueva vida. Él mismo nos relata el proceso que le llevó desde Inglaterra a los Estados Unidos y qué papel jugó la cadena de restaurantes en la producción del divertido juego para Megadrive.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. I was in England and I got a call from the CEO of Virgin in the United States.
You were not in the US yet at that time, or were you?
No, I was in England and,
okay.
and they were in the United States.
Okay.
So this guy, his name was Martin Alper, and Martin called up and he said, you know, we need your help to get this McDonald's game done. Would you be willing to get on a plane and fly to America, and we will, whatever you're earning, we'll pay you more. We'll give you royalties. We'll get you a car, an apartment, anything you need. Just get on a plane like now. And I got to California, and the ticket was Los Angeles Airport. So I thought I was going to Los Angeles. It turns out they picked me up at the airport and drove me to a place called Irvine. And I'm like, Irvine? Where is Irvine? You know, what am I doing here? Like, it's in the middle of nowhere. And it turns out, like, across the street was Blizzard and Interplay. So you had real companies in Irvine, and Irvine turned out to be a kind of a cool spot, but Virgin was there. And we got to make this game for McDonald's, and the game was called Global Gladiators. But McDonald's weren't happy. They didn't like the game because they thought that the game should have starred Ronald McDonald. And so when they came and saw the game, they were upset. And they kind of insisted that we put Ronald McDonald in the game. And we put him at the end of the levels waving a flag, but we didn't really want him in the game. So that didn't go well with them, but we launched the game. And it won Game of the Year with Sega. And I think it also got Best Graphics of the Year, Best Audio.
It was a great game. I loved it.
Yeah. Yes, so we got a lot of attention for it because it was just a kind of a new game from a team of people who had never worked together. So I'd never worked with these people, but they were great. So they had great animators, great audio. Like Tommy Tallarico was doing the audio, and we've got this really cool team suddenly, and I really enjoyed the whole experience.
No sería el único ejemplo de juegos franquiciados por marcas comerciales en que Perry trabajaría, y poco después las hamburguesas dejaron paso a los refrescos con 7-Up. Cool Spot, el plataformas de la molona chapa roja, también lleva su firma y demostró que era posible hacer un buen juego independientemente del referente o la excusa de partida si se tiene el talento y la visión que David y su equipo atesoraban. Con un equipo de grafistas liderado por Mike Ditch, el resultado maravilló a Sega, que volvió a ellos para hacerles un encargo inolvidable de la mano de otro grande, Disney.
Ended up opening up another door because Sega came back afterwards saying, well, we have the rights to Aladdin, and would you be willing to do that game? And Virgin said yes, of course. But I think our animation team helped really win that because I think it was obvious that we knew how to animate, and we also cared. So Jeffrey Katzenberg, who was the head of the studios at the time, said to us, you know, what do you need? We want this to be great. So what do you need from us? And the answer was, can we have the animation team from Disney? And he said, you know, sure, no problem. Jeffrey Katzenberg knew this was important, ended up giving us the ability to do new impossible things. Like, you never have Disney Animation making your game, and suddenly you do. So suddenly our animation looks incredible, and that became like a drug to us because we wanted all of our animation to be like this.
No cabe duda de que la vida que Perry y los suyos insuflaban a sus personajes a través de la animación fue clave en su éxito, pero también un elemento central de su filosofía. Aladdin arrasó, y para Sega no pasó inadvertido a quien debían agradecérselo. Tal fue así que poco antes de dar el paso definitivo y dejar Virgin, Perry recibió una oferta tentadora.
At the same time, Sega was trying to recruit me to go and join Sega in Northern California. I would have got to work with, they were like, Yuji Naka, do you want to work with him? And I'm like, I'd love to work with him, he's awesome.
Pero lo que ocurrió es que el equipo prefirió plantearse nuevos horizontes, sabedores de que podían ser los dueños de su futuro gracias a su talento, y decidieron crear su propio estudio. Tras cerrar un acuerdo con Playmates, la juguetera que comercializara las figuras de las tortugas ninja, años después de la labor de Perry al frente del juego de los reptiles para ordenador, consiguieron que les financiaran su nueva aventura independiente y crearon Shiny Entertainment.
Shiny Entertainment.
Tras buscar y buscar una licencia con la que volver a dar un golpe comercial, algo que, como hemos visto, Perry descubrió funcionaba, y habiendo desechado ideas para llevar a las consolas al legendario coche fantástico, fue gracias a Doug TenNapel, un prodigioso animador recién subido al barco, que su siguiente gran éxito cobró forma.
As his test, he drew Earthworm Jim, and so we're like, oh my goodness, we love this character. This is a game we want to make, not, you know, we should make. This is one we actually thought was funny, and it sort of fit the fact that we wanted to make a game without a design document. Like we designed the game based on what we thought was funny or what we found interesting that day, and so the game. That's why Earthworm Jim, you can never tell what's going to happen next.
Yeah, it's crazy.
It's crazy, and I think that culture in the company of always trying to do something a little different became a bit of a drug for us. We really enjoyed that.
Earthworm Jim, una locura como el propio Perry afirma, que dio la vuelta a las tornas y acabó siendo licenciado para juguetes y hasta una serie de televisión, demostrando que también valían para crear personajes rebosantes de carisma sin necesidad de recurrir a nombres conocidos. Las aventuras de la lombriz espacial y ese universo hilarante eran adictivas, técnicamente notables y sobre todo un ejemplo de la filosofía de diseño que Perry y su equipo llevaban por bandera.
There's a thing in Earthworm Jim which I don't know is obvious, but I think it's a great gameplay mechanic, is the idea of going from strong to weak. So the idea that your character can be strong and weak is what really drew me into it, because I love that idea of you're so tough and you're so strong, and then suddenly you get pulled out of the suit and now you're a little earthworm with nothing, and everything hurts, and you go into a different mode. So I think if I was working on another character, I'd always be thinking about that. How do you make it so that the character has interesting, has an interesting trait to it like that they can actually change, and that's why the character was cool. It wasn't just a guy called Jim, who runs around with a gun. It was this funny character that could do, and the ability to pull anything out of his pocket. Like he can pull a rocket out of his pocket. Well, what else? And the answer is actually anything. He could pull a cow out of the suit if he wanted.
Yes.
And that made it funny as well, because that kept it unpredictable.
Su filosofía de trabajo a la hora de diseñar el título, no ciñéndose a un plan estricto y previo, inmutable en gran medida como era costumbre en la industria, se antojaba fundamental para hacer que el jugador disfrutara. En lugar de planearlo todo, siguieron una suerte de ensayo-error para el que la única regla que confirmaba que iban en el buen camino es que ellos mismos se divirtieran.
I was like, well, we don't work that way. So what we do is we're going to have Jim jumping until it feels good, right? And then whatever distance he jumps is where we're going to put things, right? So, that's the right distance then. So that's where things will go to land on. And you start doing that, but then someone will come up with a crazy idea, like, let's ride a hamster, or let's get inside a glass submarine and start trying to and we'll just tinker around with it until it feels. And then the people in the office start playing it, and you would see them playing it because they're having fun playing it. And then we know we have something good. If no one wants to play it, that's probably bad. So you could see how that would evolve. And then we'd have a meeting and someone would say, I've got a crazy idea. Let's have no level. It's going to be just darkness, and we'll just be a pair of eyes, and you'll just control the eyes, right? And then we're like, that won't work because that's just crazy. And then we're like, well, let's try it. See, and then you start playing it. It's actually kind of crazy and fun. And we're like, okay, I've never seen that before, so let's do it.
Tras una segunda parte en la que Perry tuvo una labor más alejada del día a día del diseño y la programación, las 3D llamaban ya a la puerta de Shiny. Y tras años de dedicarse en cuerpo y alma a parir maravillas bidimensionales como las que constaban en su currículum, tuvieron que plantearse dar el salto a una nueva realidad en la industria que ya lo inundaba todo.
What's the future of this company? Is it to just make these one single games forever, or do we start to think about where the industry is going? And the signal was that the industry is going to go to 3D. And we were trying to resist it because we didn't want to go 3D. Our team were all hold pencils, like they draw with pencils, and you're like, no, you're gonna have to use silicon graphics computers that cost $25,000, and they were like, we're not interested. We just want to draw, and so we resisted it, but it was clearly the future, and so we started to embrace the idea of what other projects could we do, and we actually brought in more talent to help us sort of bridge that gap, and then slowly move over and start making games in 3D.
Las dudas respecto de este paso llevaron a Perry a vender Shiny a Interplay, que respaldarían la nueva etapa de la empresa con su músculo y experiencia. Dudas que en cualquier caso no estaban justificadas, como su primer juego tridimensional demostró. MDK resultó ser un título ya no solo innovador y divertido, sino que les reportó muchos beneficios gracias a inteligentes acuerdos para incluirlo preinstalado en un montón de máquinas.
In those days, when you bought a computer, they would pre-install games on it, and they would actually pay us, 75 cents or $1 for every single computer they made. And so it turned out to be an incredible way to make money. The very first Apple, those ones that were like color plastic, the first iMac, that had MDK on it,
built
right? Built in. So we had a lot of fun making MDK. Again, it was funny. You'd shoot enemies and they'd wiggle their butts at you and things like that. And it was a strange world. That was the first game with sniper weapons, so you could zoom in a mile away and hit someone right in the eye. That was pretty neat. And so, even though we were so scared of 3D, I think we realized, no, actually, we're going to be okay.
Tras confirmarlo con Messiah, un juego que les llevó a desarrollar una tecnología avanzada en la que una especie de IA en el código hacía que la cantidad de polígonos en pantalla cambiara orgánicamente para cada elemento. Y aunque las máquinas de momento en muchos casos no podían gestionar la carga gráfica,
in a way we'd gone from scared of 3D to actually, I think, to some extent, Intel loved us at the time because we were pushing the limits of their hardware.
El paréntesis de creatividad alejada de licencias que supuso su aventura en Shiny tocó a su fin cuando el cambio generacional en Hollywood permitió que los nuevos talentos de la industria del cine, que habían crecido jugando a videojuegos, se fijaran en el medio como forma de expandir sus obras y ya no solo de promocionarlas. Con Enter the Matrix, Perry tuvo la oportunidad de trabajar codo con las Wachowski, y el título ayudó a rellenar muchos huecos de la historia de la saga en paralelo al argumento de la misma.
The Wachowskis, who were really, really serious gamers, like they really understand games, felt the need to make a game where the movie and the game would actually collaborate. So it wouldn't be, the goal was not to say, here's the Matrix license, go make some random game. It was, here's the storyline of the game. You're going to go here, you're going to go here, you're going to go here. Literally, this is the game, and the game is going to fit perfectly within the structure of the movie. And then we're going to shoot an hour of new movie footage, which we've written, meaning the directors, and we're going to give you that. In Matrix Reloaded, you'll see things like Morpheus fighting with an agent on an oil truck or a petrol truck, and Morpheus falls off the back and lands on the hood of Niobe's car. In the video game, you got the car there, so you saved Morpheus.
Perry recuerda con cariño esa experiencia conjunta, pero no le pasa igual al rememorar el que él mismo define como el mayor error de su carrera, que también tiene que ver con la saga de las Wachowski y que tuvo lugar poco tiempo antes de embarcarse en Enter the Matrix.
I turned down the first Matrix movie, which is actually the worst decision I've ever made. I think it was the most unbelievably bad decision to not make the Matrix video game. And what happened was the movie came out, and then I watched it, and I just was like, oh no, this is my favorite movie, and I turned it down. And then they called up after, this was the executive producer, Joel Silver, his office called up and said, would you like to try again, and we'll have this conversation about the Matrix Reloaded, which was their second movie. But the game that we made didn't star as Neo, and internally it was a bit like the Terminator problem. We really want to make a game with Neo. We really just, please, can we make a game with Neo? And the directors and Warner Brothers said, yes, you can. So we went and made The Path of Neo, which was more of a bit of a tribute to Neo. Like, we want to let you have that scene, you know, where you're in the building and you're shooting and running around and jumping and doing all the backflips and everything. We needed to have that for the gamers, and so we did.
La inquietud de Perry por los avances tecnológicos le llevó después a experimentar con el juego en la nube. Esa fue su siguiente aventura. Atraído por el multijugador masivo free-to-play que diera sus primeros pasos en Corea, decidió traer el fenómeno a Occidente fundando Gaikai. El reto era conseguir que cantidades ingentes de jugadores pudieran conectarse y disfrutar juntos, y para ello el juego en la nube se antojaba la mejor opción. Su idea era que cualquier máquina, por escasa que fuera su potencia, pudiera ejecutar los juegos con solvencia y de forma instantánea, porque todo se enviaría por stream al ordenador sin que hubiera merma alguna en la respuesta. ¿Una locura? Para muchos tal vez, pero no para Perry.
A lot of people thought that we were crazy. Like, this is the dumbest idea ever. You'll never be able to get this to work. They'll never feel good. And we did. We found ways to remove the latency completely, and even today I haven't experienced that yet. So what's funny, in 2012 we had removed the complete latency. In all of the modern solutions, but they still haven't removed all the latency, which is kind of funny, right? But just know it can be done. There's reviews online of people going, how is this possible? You know, like, I've got a computer here, I got this one's coming from the cloud, this one's sitting in my room, and they feel the same. That's not possible.
Gaikai acabó siendo adquirida por PlayStation, quién sabe si complacidos, además de por sus incuestionables bondades tecnológicas, por ese término japonés que le daba nombre. Y Perry se embarcó en otras aventuras, dejando claro que su aportación al videojuego va más allá de los maravillosos títulos que firmara. La nube, que como vemos le debe mucho, es para un amplio sector de los usuarios más bien una borrasca que se cierne sobre el formato físico y que amenaza con dar al traste un día con las consolas tal y como las conocemos. Para Perry ese futuro no es pese a todo tan sombrío, y augura un tiempo en que las ventajas de la inmediatez, se use el dispositivo que se use, para acceder a cualquier juego de cualquier época será una realidad como la del vídeo bajo demanda.
That's my question back to you, is would you like every game in history available instantly on any device? Like, anywhere you are, you're having a conversation about a certain game from, you know, 1977, you should be able to hit a button and just play it.
Yeah, that would be amazing.
Right? And then the second question, which I was trying to explain to PlayStation, and they sort of ran with this, but they didn't quite fully grasp it. But the idea was that gamers will become more literate if they play more games. So today they get very locked into, I'm going to play Fortnite every day, all day, every day, right? Which is fine. Mm-hmm. But if everything else was just a click away, and any downtime, you know, they're eating their cereal, they should be able to check out a game, right? And the idea that everything is available instantly means that they should be able to just consume a lot more games, and that gives them opinions on more games, and the conversations will get more interesting because they'll be, you know, have all kinds of, like, I like this part of this, I don't like this, I like this. And if they ever become designers, that's going to help them because they've experienced so much content.
Se sumaría a otro elemento que hoy es ya una preocupación para muchos, la preservación. Es cierto que hoy la emulación permite acceder a gran parte del catálogo histórico del sector, pero en ese futuro que Perry dibuja, se elimina gran parte del farragoso lado de ese mundo que echa para atrás a un buen número de aficionados.
I'm very supportive of that, and I think that that's something that cloud gaming is their best friend, because over time, running all the emulators and keeping them all updated and, you know,
it's
trying
crazy,
to manage, you don't want to do any of that.
Yeah.
Configurations, not interested. Just, you know, I want to think of a game and just hit play.
Y quiere jugarlos porque, como nosotros, David Perry es por encima de todo lo demás un jugón. Lo transmite en la pasión que pone en su discurso y en los detalles que le llevaron a crear algunos de los títulos más recordados de la era dorada de los 16 bits. Y como sucede que uno no siempre tiene la posibilidad de charlar con una leyenda del sector como él, no quise dejar la oportunidad de preguntarle por uno de ellos, que al menos a este lado del mundo ha dado para debates interminables y a menudo acalorados.
the last question. At least in Spain, but I guess that's something that's maybe been going on for a while everywhere else. I would like to think so, but in Spain there's been a debate for years now between your Aladdin game and Capcom's Aladdin game, and I do not want to put an end to this interview without asking you what do you think about the debate, because there are people supporting yours, I myself too, and there are some others that think that Capcom's game was, I don't know if better is the word, but at least better for them, let's say. And I would like to know what Dave Perry's opinion is. Of course, I know that you love yours, but I would like you to answer this question: which one's better and why? Come on, tell me.
I mean, I don't think I've ever been asked that question, but that's a great question. So this is interesting. So I have to, my take on it is I was actually an enormous fan of Capcom. I grew up with their games, Commando and things like that. I mean, when I play an emulator, I still go to games like Commando because the stuff they made was just incredible. And, I felt that their Aladdin had that Capcom feel to it. And I think that in itself makes it great. So the fact that it's sort of Aladdin plus Capcom makes it really cool. And I would have hated to compete with those guys straight up, honestly, because they were Jedis. But we had Disney animation behind us, and so we have this more cartoonish, more authentic, I think, feeling because we had Disney in our corner. I think that made it an unfair fight, honestly. So I don't think we were actually competing directly. I think we had sort of snuck in a whole team and a budget that was far beyond whatever their budget would have been because we had Disney there. And when you put all that together, I think the Aladdin on the Genesis felt fresher because it had this new animation. And so, gameplay-wise, I never really played their game, so I can't tell you moment to moment if it was more fun. But, being a Capcom game, I can imagine it was. So I guess that's my answer, is I would have hated to compete with them straight up. But we kind of...
Luckily enough, they were different, right? And that's
I think we kind of went, we got something you don't have, so maybe that makes it better. But in reality, and I've seen the debate online, and people do fall on both sides, which is kind of fun.
Yes.
But I have to say, Capcom, I mean, throughout my whole gaming career, I've been super, super impressed by them, the innovations that they had over the years. So, I think I was kind of lucky getting Disney on our side.
La gran pregunta, sí. Pero sus respuestas, todas, fueron maravillosas. David Perry es una leyenda viva que ilustra con cada recuerdo y anécdota la historia del sector, porque con sus logros, alcanzados a base de talento y duro trabajo, contribuyó sin duda alguna a escribirla. Su currículum está repleto de joyas rebosantes de humor, jugabilidad desbordante, animaciones de fábula y un profundo entendimiento de lo que los jugadores, los de entonces y los de ahora, porque al final esto no ha cambiado tanto, buscamos. Diversión. Hoy Memory Card Profiles cierra su tercera entrega en su compañía. Muchísimas gracias, David, por tu tiempo y por este inolvidable viaje al pasado.
¡Ruby! Bueno, ¿qué voy a decir? Que con ese final, sobre todo, no digo si se zanja un debate, pero desde luego aporta una opinión muy valiosa como es la suya. Y en cualquier caso, ha sido un programa lleno de anécdotas y recuerdos que hablan de una personalidad importante, que tiene mucho que decir todavía y que nos ha hecho, como decía yo al final, viajar en el tiempo pues de una manera especial, ¿no? De viva voz y recordando cosas que de otra forma habría sido seguramente imposible que nosotros tuviésemos acceso a ellas. Chicos, como siempre, muchas gracias. Volvemos dentro de 15 días Memory Card y dentro de no mucho más con otro Profiles. ¿Quién será el invitado? Nos vemos. ¡Chao!